Rain dripped from his coat onto the polished marble floor, each drop echoing louder than it should. No one spoke at first, because nothing about him belonged there. Not the torn sleeves, not the worn-out shoes, not the silence he carried like he had nothing left to lose. And yet, there he was, standing inches away from a $300,000 car, staring at it like it meant something, like it was his. "Sir, you need to leave." The voice cut through the room, sharp, impatient. A few customers turned, then more. Eyes shifted, judgments formed. "This isn't a shelter," the salesman added, louder this time. "You're making people uncomfortable." Still, the man didn't move, didn't argue, didn't beg. He just smiled. Not the kind of smile that asks for mercy, the kind that knows something you don't. That's when security stepped in. Firm hands. No hesitation. They grabbed him, dragged him across the showroom, past rows of cars he wasn't worthy to touch. The glass doors swung open. Cold air rushed in. And just before he was thrown out into the rain, he finally spoke. Quietly, calmly. "You might want to rethink that." The doors slammed shut behind him. Inside, laughter broke the tension. Outside, he didn't look back. But what no one inside that dealership realized, not the salesman, not the manager, not a single person watching, was that in less than 48 hours, everything they thought they controlled would be gone. And the man they just threw out was the reason why. No one knew where he came from. He just appeared. Some mornings, he was already there before the city woke up, sitting on the curb across the street, still, watching, like he was waiting for something no one else could see. His name was Ethan Cole. At least, that's what it used to be. Now, to everyone passing by, he was just another invisible man. The kind people learn to look through, not at. Wrinkled clothes, unshaven face, quiet in a way that made people uncomfortable. He never asked for money, never spoke unless spoken to, and somehow, that made people trust him even less. Across the street stood everything he wasn't. Glass walls, polished floors, machines worth more than most people's homes. The dealership wasn't just selling cars, it was selling status. Inside, Logan Pierce thrived. Top salesman, sharp suit, sharper tongue. He could read people in seconds, or at least, he thought he could. Who was worth his time? Who could afford to dream? Who didn't belong? And Logan didn't make mistakes. Not when commission was on the line. Not when reputation meant everything. Above him was Amber Collins. Controlled, calculated, obsessed with perfection. To her, the dealership wasn't just a business, it was an image. Every detail mattered. Every customer had to fit the brand. Every employee had to protect it, because one wrong impression could cost millions. So they trained for it, taught to judge fast, filter faster, and never, under any circumstance, waste time on someone who didn't look like money. And Ethan didn't look like anything close. Night after night, when the showroom lights dimmed and the last engine fell silent, he stayed, sitting across the street, watching, not with envy, not with longing, but with a kind of focus that didn't make sense. Like he wasn't looking at the cars. He was studying the people, the patterns, the choices, the mistakes. Because while everyone else saw a man with nothing, no one stopped to ask what he was really doing there. And if they had, they might have realized this wasn't random, it wasn't coincidence, and it definitely wasn't harmless. Because the next time Ethan Cole walked through those glass doors, something was going to happen. Something small, something almost unnoticeable, but it would be the first crack in everything they thought was untouchable. The next morning, he came back. Same clothes, same silence, same unreadable expression. But this time, he didn't hesitate. He didn't pause at the entrance. Didn't glance around like he didn't belong. He walked in like he knew exactly where he was going. Straight across the showroom, past the cheaper models, past the distractions, until he stopped. One car, not the flashiest, not the newest, but specific, intentional. Logan noticed immediately. His jaw tightened. That guy again? A few heads turned. Whispers started. Why does he keep coming back? Does he think this is a museum? Someone needs to get him out of here. But Ethan didn't hear them. Or maybe he just didn't care. He stepped closer to the car. Slowly, like every movement meant something. His fingers brushed against the paint, not carelessly, but precisely. He followed the curve of the body like he'd done it before, like he remembered it. Then he crouched slightly, eyes narrowing, studying the wheels, the trim, the tiny details no casual buyer would ever notice. Logan frowned. Something about it felt wrong. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't someone dreaming. This was recognition. Ethan moved to the driver's side, paused, then leaned in just enough to look inside. His eyes scanned the dashboard, the stitching, the controls. Not impressed, not confused, just calculating. And for a brief second, his expression changed. Not admiration, not desire, disappointment. Logan felt it before he understood it. That quiet shift in the air, like something invisible had just gone off. But something about the way he looked at that car didn't match the way he looked. Logan stepped forward, slower this time, more cautious, because suddenly, this didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like something else, something he couldn't explain. And just as he got closer, Ethan reached out again, this time pressing lightly against a panel near the door, as if he was checking for something. Something only he knew was supposed to be there. Logan stopped, right behind him now, watching, waiting, trying to figure it out. Because whatever this man was doing, it wasn't random, it wasn't harmless, and it definitely wasn't normal. But the real question was, how could someone who looked like that know exactly what to look for on a car like this? And what he discovered next would destroy everything. Logan didn't wait this time. He stepped in close, too close. "All right, that's enough," he snapped. "You've had your fun. You're not buying anything. You're wasting everyone's time." The room shifted. Customers turned fully now. Conversations slowed. Eyes locked in. This wasn't quiet anymore. This was a scene. Ethan didn't move, didn't step back, didn't break eye contact. Logan's voice got louder. "You think you can just walk in here, touch things you can't afford, and pretend like you belong?" A few nervous laughs echoed behind him. Someone whispered, "Finally." Ethan tilted his head slightly. Then, calmly, almost politely, he spoke. "Do you always treat potential buyers like this?" For a second, silence. Then the laughter came. Louder this time. Sharper. Not just from the staff, but from a few customers too. Because to them, the idea was ridiculous. Him? A buyer? Logan smirked. "Potential," he repeated. "Let's be realistic." That's when Amber stepped in. Composed. Controlled. But her eyes were cold. She didn't ask questions. Didn't hesitate. She had already made her decision. "We have standards here," she said flatly. "And you're disrupting the experience." A pause. Then, without even looking at him again, "Remove him, and make sure he doesn't come back." That was it. No warning. No second chance. 2 security guards moved in immediately. Firm hands. No conversation. They grabbed Ethan by the arms. This time harder. Rougher. More final. Customers watched openly now. Some uncomfortable. Some amused. Some recording quietly on their phones. And still, Ethan didn't resist. Didn't argue. Didn't raise his voice. He just let it happen. Step by step, dragged across the same floor he had walked so calmly just minutes ago. But this time, something was different. Because as they pushed him toward the doors, he wasn't looking at them. He wasn't looking at Logan, or Amber, or anyone. His eyes were fixed on something else. The dealership sign, mounted high above the glass entrance. Bright, polished, untouchable. He stared at it longer than he should have. Like he was committing it to memory. Like he was marking it. Then the doors opened. Cold air rushed in again. And just like that, he was gone, thrown back into the street. The laughter inside faded. The tension broke. And life moved on. At least, that's what they thought. Because inside, Logan brushed it off. Amber adjusted her jacket. Customers returned to their conversations. And within minutes, it was like Ethan Cole had never been there at all. But outside, standing alone, something shifted. Subtle, invisible, but irreversible. Because most people walk away when they're disrespected. Ethan Cole was not most people. He looked up at that sign one last time. And for the first time, he smiled. Not the quiet smile from before. This one was different. Colder. Certain. Like a decision had just been made. And somewhere, far away from that showroom floor, a call was about to be placed. A file was about to be opened. And a truth they had no idea existed was about to surface. Because the man they threw out wasn't just watching them. He was documenting them. And what he had already seen was only the beginning. The rain hadn't stopped. But Ethan didn't slow down. He crossed the street, disappeared into the city, and within minutes, everything about him began to change. The noise faded. The chaos disappeared. And the world he stepped into next didn't recognize him as a stranger. It recognized him as someone important. The building was quiet, polished, controlled. The kind of place where nothing was out of place and no one asked unnecessary questions. The moment he walked in, the shift was immediate. No suspicious looks, no whispers, no laughter, just a nod from security. Respectful, familiar. Good evening, sir. Sir. Not hey you. Not you don't belong here. Sir. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. He moved past them, calm, precise, like this was where he had always belonged. Because it was. Inside the elevator, he reached up, slowly pulling off the soaked, worn jacket. And just like that, the illusion cracked. Underneath the dirt, the wrinkles, the disguise, was something entirely different. A tailored suit. Sharp, expensive, intentional. The kind of suit that didn't just fit, it commanded. By the time the doors opened, Ethan Cole was gone. And whoever stepped out was someone else entirely. At the end of the hallway, a man was already waiting. Daniel Reeves. Composed. Observant. The kind of man who didn't waste words. Their eyes met. No introductions. No explanations. Just one question. So how bad is it? A pause. Not long, but heavy. Because whatever answer came next was going to matter. Ethan walked past him, dropped the wet jacket onto a chair, and finally spoke. Worse than we thought. Daniel's expression didn't change, but his silence did, because he understood what that meant. Ethan moved toward the glass wall, overlooking the city. Calm, focused, like everything he had just experienced wasn't emotional. It was data, profiling, discrimination, missed opportunities, he said quietly. They're not selling cars, they're filtering people. Daniel exhaled slowly. And the numbers? Ethan didn't turn. They're hiding it. That landed harder than anything else. Because this wasn't just about attitude anymore. This was about deception. About a system built to look perfect on the outside, while rotting underneath. Ethan finally turned back. His eyes sharper now. Clearer. Nothing like the man they had thrown out just hours ago. They failed the test. And just like that, the truth snapped into place. He wasn't a beggar. He wasn't lost. And he definitely wasn't there by accident. He was the owner. The architect behind everything they thought they understood. And what happened in that showroom was never random. It was planned, measured, designed. Because Ethan Cole wasn't there to buy a car. He was there to test the people selling them. And they didn't just fail. They exposed something much bigger. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Because if one location was this broken, how many others were just like it? Daniel leaned forward slightly. What do you want to do? Ethan didn't hesitate. Everything. And in that single word, you could feel it. The shift. The storm building. Because this wasn't going to be a warning. It wasn't going to be a quiet fix. It was going to be something else entirely. Something they would never see coming. Because while they were laughing, judging, pushing him out the door, he was already deciding their future. And what he had planned next wouldn't just cost them their jobs. It would expose everything they tried to hide. The footage didn't lie. It never does. Frame by frame, moment by moment, the truth unfolded in silence. A young couple walks in nervous but hopeful. They're ignored. A man in work boots asks a question. He's brushed off before he can finish speaking. A woman lingers near a luxury model. Logan glances once, then walks straight past her. Not because she couldn't afford it, but because he decided she couldn't. Ethan watched it all. No emotion on his face. Just focus. Pause. Rewind. Zoom. Patterns. Not accidents. Not bad days. Patterns. Every decision calculated, just in the wrong direction. Every assumption costing them more than they realized. Daniel stood behind him, arms crossed. How much are we losing? Ethan didn't answer immediately. He pulled up another file. Numbers. Cold. Brutal. Unforgiving. 37% drop in qualified buyers over 6 months, he said quietly. High-value clients walking out, without ever being approached. Daniel frowned. That doesn't match the reports. Ethan nodded slightly. Exactly. Another file opened. Customer complaints. Dozens of them. Ignored. Deleted. Buried. Phrases repeated over and over again. Felt judged. Wasn't taken seriously. Walked out humiliated. Daniel's voice lowered. They hid this. Ethan finally looked at him. They curated the truth. And that was worse. Because this wasn't incompetence. This was control. Back at the dealership, nothing had changed. Laughter filled the showroom. Logan stood near the same car, telling the same story. You should have seen his face, he said, grinning. Guy really thought he belonged in here. A few employees laughed. One of them shook his head. Man, people have no shame. Amber didn't join in, but she didn't stop it either. Because as far as they were concerned, that moment was over. Handled. Forgotten. But the irony was suffocating. Because the one person they mocked was the only one who knew exactly what they had just lost and what was about to happen next. Ethan closed the final file. Silence filled the room. Not empty silence. The kind that comes before something irreversible. Daniel studied him carefully. You're not just going to shut it down, are you? Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached for something else. A schedule. A visit. Already planned. Already approved. Daniel's eyes narrowed. You're going back? Ethan adjusted his cuffs slowly. Not like this. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because everything they had seen so far, every mistake, every insult, every hidden truth, that was just the surface. Ethan wasn't done testing them. He was about to do something far more dangerous. Something they wouldn't be able to laugh off. Because the next time he walked through those doors, they wouldn't see a beggar. They wouldn't see a threat. They would see exactly what they wanted to see. And that was the real trap. Because in less than 24 hours, the same people who threw him out would be standing in front of him again, smiling, performing, pretending, completely unaware that they were about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. The message came without warning. Corporate was coming. Not a routine check. Not a scheduled review. An unannounced visit. And just like that, everything changed. The laughter disappeared. The confidence cracked. The same people who mocked straightened their ties and fixed their smiles. Because this was different. This mattered. Logan paced the floor, sharper than usual. Amber's voice carried more edge, more urgency. Everyone stays sharp. No mistakes. No exceptions. The showroom transformed. Polished. Perfect. Performative. Exactly the way it was always meant to look. But not the way it really was. Minutes passed. Then the doors opened. And he walked in. Clean. Composed. Unrecognizable. The same man, but not the same presence. The suit fit like authority. The silence around him felt heavier now, controlled. He didn't look around. Didn't hesitate. He moved forward like he belonged there. Like he always had. At first, no one noticed. Just another executive. Just another suit. Until Logan turned. And froze. Something didn't make sense. Not immediately, but enough to make his stomach drop. Because there was something familiar in the way he walked. The way he looked at the cars. The way he didn't need to prove anything to anyone in the room. Recognition hit slowly. Then all at once, his face drained of color. No way. Amber followed his gaze. And in that single moment, everything unraveled. Her expression collapsed. Because she saw it too. Not the clothes. Not the image. Him. The man they dragged out. The man they laughed at. Standing right in front of them. Untouchable. The room went quiet. Not normal quiet. The kind that suffocates. That presses down on your chest and doesn't let you breathe. Ethan stopped in the center of the showroom. Looked around. Calm. Controlled. Certain. Then his eyes landed on Logan. And he held them there. Just long enough. Long enough to let it sink in. Every word. Every action. Every mistake. Then he spoke. Softly. Clearly. Without a trace of anger. Yesterday. A pause. You threw me out of a business I own. No one moved. No one spoke. Because no one could. The weight of it hit all at once. Confusion. Shock. Fear. The pieces started connecting. Too fast. Too late. Logan stepped back slightly, like distance could fix it. Amber opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because there was nothing to say. No explanation that could undo what had already been done. No excuse strong enough to survive that sentence. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Because power doesn't shout. It reveals. And in that moment, everything they thought they controlled belonged to him. The air shifted. Heavy. Unforgiving. And just when it felt like it couldn't get worse, Ethan reached into his pocket, pulled something out. Small. Simple. A device. And placed it gently on the desk. I didn't just come here once. Silence deepened. I've been watching. That's when the fear changed. Because this wasn't about one mistake anymore. This wasn't about one bad decision. This was something else. Something bigger. Something recorded. Documented. Proven. And as their minds raced to catch up, to understand how deep this really went, one question began to form. How much did he see? And how much were they about to lose? The silence didn't break. It fractured. Logan's voice came first, but it didn't sound like him anymore. We were protecting the brand. Desperate. Defensive. Cracking at the edges. Ethan didn't let him finish. You were protecting your assumptions. Sharp. Final. Unarguable. And just like that, whatever confidence Logan had left collapsed. Because deep down he knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. The room shifted again, but this time, it turned inward. I stopped looking at Ethan and started looking at each other. Whispers turned into accusations. You told us to filter clients. No, that was you. We were following your lead. Voices overlapping. Faster. Louder. Messier. Because when the truth shows up, blame follows right behind it. Amber stood still at first. Frozen. Like if she didn't move, it wouldn't be real. But then the words started echoing. Complaints. Reports. Emails she had skimmed, ignored, dismissed. Customer felt profiled. Staff dismissed, serious buyer. Unprofessional treatment. She remembered them now. Not clearly, but enough. Enough to know she had seen the warning signs. And chose the image over the truth. Her breath caught. Because this wasn't just failure. It was negligence. And it had a cost. Ethan watched all of it unfold. Calm. Unmoved. Not because it didn't matter, but because he had already processed this moment long before they ever reached it. I've done this test across 12 locations, he said quietly. That stopped everything. 12. 12 chances to get it right. 12 opportunities to prove something different. And this one, he continued, eyes steady, scored the worst. The words didn't need emphasis. They carried their own weight. Worst. Not average. Not struggling. The worst. It hit harder than being exposed. Because it meant they weren't just flawed. They were the example of what not to be. Logan looked down at his hands. For the first time, they felt empty. All the deals. All the commissions. All the confidence he built his identity on. None of it mattered now. Because one moment, one decision, had revealed who he really was. And it wasn't who he thought. Amber closed her eyes briefly. Not to escape, but to face it. The truth she avoided. The culture she allowed. The damage she signed off on without ever saying the words out loud. This wasn't about one moment, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the tension. A pause. It was about a culture. And that word lingered. Culture. Something invisible. Something built slowly. And destroyed instantly. The room felt smaller now. Heavier. Like the walls themselves were closing in with the weight of everything unsaid. No one defended themselves anymore. Because there was nothing left to defend. Only consequences. And the realization that this wasn't over. Not even close. Because Ethan hadn't raised his voice. Hadn't made a single final decision. Hadn't said what happens next. And somehow, that was the most terrifying part. Because whatever came next wouldn't just hurt. It would define them. And as Ethan took a slow step forward, looking at each of them, one by one, there was only one question left hanging in the air. Who was about to lose everything? And who wasn't walking out at all? No one spoke. Because this was the moment everything balanced on. Ethan stepped forward, slow, deliberate, the kind of movement that didn't ask for attention, but commanded it anyway. His eyes moved across the room. Not rushing. Not skipping anyone. Because every person standing there had a part in what this place had become. You didn't lose a sale. His voice was calm, controlled, but it landed heavy. You lost your integrity. A pause. No one dared interrupt. And that costs more than any car in this room. It hit differently now. Because this wasn't about business anymore. It was about who they were when no one was watching. Logan swallowed hard. You don't understand, he started. Ethan turned to him. And just that look was enough to stop the sentence from ever finishing. I understand perfectly, Ethan said. That's why we're here. A single breath passed through the room. Then it happened. Logan Pierce. The name echoed. For repeated misconduct, discriminatory behavior, and misrepresentation of company values. A beat. You're terminated. Effective immediately. No build-up. No warning. Just final. Logan didn't argue this time. Didn't defend himself. Because there was nothing left to stand on. Everything he thought made him valuable had just been erased in a sentence. Ethan shifted his attention. Amber Collins. Her name carried more weight. More history. More responsibility. You didn't create the culture, he said. A brief pause. But you allowed it. Her eyes dropped. And for that, you're removed from your position. Pending full investigation. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was devastating. Because leadership wasn't about what you built. It was about what you tolerated. The rest of the staff stood frozen, waiting, because now they understood. This wasn't selective. This wasn't random. This was systemic. Every one of you will be reviewed, Ethan continued. Not just for performance, but for character. No one moved, because no one knew what would be left when that process was done. Then something shifted. Not in the room. In him. Ethan's voice softened slightly. Not weaker. Just real. I know what it's like to walk into a place like this and feel invisible. That caught them off guard. Because this wasn't part of the script they expected. I know what it's like to be judged before you even speak. His eyes weren't scanning anymore. They were remembering. I built this company from nothing, he said quietly. No connections. No shortcuts. Just opportunity, and people who gave me a chance when I didn't look like I deserved one. Silence deepened. Not tense this time. Heavy. Meaningful. I built this place for people who were overlooked. A breath. Not to overlook them. And there it was. The truth beneath everything. Not anger. Not revenge. Principle. The kind that doesn't bend, even when it's inconvenient. Ethan stepped back slightly. Not retreating. Just finished. Or at least it seemed that way. Because just as the weight of his words settled, he reached into his pocket again, pulled out a thin folder, and placed it on the table. Slowly. Deliberately. There's one more thing. The room tightened instantly. Because whatever they thought this was, it still wasn't over. And whatever was inside that folder was about to change everything one last time. The doors stayed closed for weeks. Silent. Empty. Polished floors untouched. Inside, the echoes of that day lingered. New faces arrived. Nervous. Careful. Watching. Learning. Every detail drilled into them now mattered. Not sales targets. Not appearances. Not first impressions. Respect first. Integrity always. No shortcuts. No assumptions. The old culture was gone. But the lessons, those ran deeper than any policy manual. Outside, the city carried on. Traffic. Noise. Life. Unaware of the storm that had passed through the building. Inside, Ethan moved again. This time, he didn't need a disguise. This time, he didn't need to command attention. He walked slowly through the showroom. Hands in pockets. Eyes scanning. Observing. He passed rows of cars like they were old friends. He passed employees practicing their scripts, their manners, their attention to detail. He said nothing. He didn't need to, because the impact had already been made. And for a brief moment, he allowed himself to remember the streets he once walked, the looks people gave him when they thought he had nothing, the cold nights outside dealerships, watching, learning, waiting. He had built something from nothing. Not just a company, a principle. Not just a test, a reckoning. He stopped at the glass doors. Looked back at the empty showroom. The silence felt different now. Not haunting. Not empty. But alive. Alive with potential. Alive with respect. Alive with the knowledge that some lessons are paid in ways that money can never measure. And as he stepped back into the street, unnoticed by anyone this time, a voice echoed in his memory. You might want to rethink that. He smiled faintly. Not triumphantly. Not cruelly. But knowingly. Because the most dangerous assumption is thinking you know someone's worth just by looking at them. Because the truth, the real truth, always waits beneath the surface. And sometimes, the person you dismiss is the one who holds the power to change everything. And if you think this story is over, it isn't. There are more doors to walk through, more lessons to teach, more truths to uncover. Because in every city, in every office, in every room, there is always someone unseen, waiting, watching. And when they finally reveal themselves, everything you thought was certain will shift. If this story made you think differently, if it made you question what you see, subscribe. Because the next story isn't just hidden. It's waiting.